After repeatedly being accused of dancing around race and racism, the New York Times has gone all in with the 1619 Project, an ambitious, sprawling, and combative attempt to reframe the way we think about the role of slavery in U.S. history. And as you'd expect, it's been both hailed and vilified.
Our decision to buy that first group of 20 to 30 Africans would influence almost everything that would follow after.
That's Nikole Hannah-Jones, the New York Times Magazine writer who conceived of the paper's 1619 Project, marking the 400th anniversary of when enslaved Africans first arrived in colonial America.
America wasn't a democracy until Black America made it one.
We were a country based on both an idea and a lie.
The project traces some unexpected ways that slavery still echoes in American life, from traffic problems in Atlanta to our collective sweet tooth to how we provide health care.
Medical students and residents still believed myths about African-American pain tolerance.
With additional contributions from poets and writers, the 1619 Project is vast, depressing, and demanding. Taking it in feels a bit like taking a college course in one day. And for some critics, it's all too much.
This is a tragic decline of the New York Times into a propaganda paper worthy of Pravda.
It's basically an effort to rewrite our founding because the New York Times hates our country and how it was founded.
The basic claim from the New York Times is that America is all racist, built on slavery. Everything is racist.
But Hannah-Jones says those critics have it wrong.
Black Americans have used those founding words to actually bring us closer to the democracy that the founders envisioned. And that is the most patriotic of things.
A premise worth pondering if you find the 1619 Project tough going. One of the things that didn't come through in the sort of absurd, to my mind, criticisms that we just saw is a concern among some conservatives that this is basically a stealth way of going after President Trump. And that gets back to this meeting that the Times had when Dean Baquet addressed concerns the paper wasn't being forthright enough about calling things racist in its reporting. And Baquet said, and I want to quote because this is important, he said, we're about to do the 1619 Project, quote, to try to understand the forces that led to the election of Donald Trump. And what I think is interesting here is that's how he presented this project to staff, but not how the project was presented to the general public, which might have opened the door to some of the conservative criticism we're hearing.
Well, you know, anything will open the door to conservative criticism, won't it?
Especially where the New York Times is concerned.
I mean, most of the criticism is not serious and needn't be addressed. I think that this is a tremendous project on the part of the Times. I think that somebody said in total it's 50,000 words.
It's
so,
huge.
Like a lot of people, I've just been easing into it. I've read the lead essay by Nikole Hannah-Jones, listened to the first episode of the podcast, which unfortunately, as it turned out, is the same as the lead essay. But as we move along, I'm looking forward to reading more and learning more. It's just, and I love the fact that there is a school curriculum project attached to it. Just great work.
Like, you know, I also have only read the first one, and it's an endeavor and a commitment to read it, written by Nikole Hannah-Jones.
Yeah, just the first one,
right?
20 pages long.
And you know, they say, as you said in your piece, they're trying to reframe history in terms of slavery. I think it's a real fine line between reframing and revising history, and I think in a couple of places, just from my own perspective, I think they cross that line. Number one, to say that we declared our independence because we wanted to maintain slavery in the United States, and Britain was heading away from slavery earlier than we were. And also, we wouldn't be or may not be a democracy anymore if it had not been for slavery. Now, we can get into all the historic reasons, but those are two narratives that I'm not loving. But I also, again, applaud them for taking it on. It's not easy. They're going to be criticized, and it's a huge project.
And I think I'll jump on what you just said. The fact that they decided to take on a project like this, I think, is amazing. I think anytime slavery is part of the fabric of our nation, it must be examined. I think a lot of times you see it from just one point of view. When I was growing up in school, it was taught a certain way. This is what you learn. This is what you believe all these years. Are all the facts adding up in this special presentation of slavery? Again, I'm just putting my toes into the water there, and it appears that it's well sourced. So from that standpoint, I think that this is credible information that's being put out there. But at the same time, I feel like the blowback that is happening, you can't expect that you're going to put something out in this current environment and not have that kind of reaction. And, I don't care whether the 2020 election is coming up or not. Critics would have said that this is bad timing. It's meant to do whatever it is they think, it is.
Well, we're hardly the only country to grapple with history and to grapple with some of the negative aspects of our history. I mean, Germany, Turkey, you can go through nearly every, you can go through nearly every country on earth and say, like, there are blots in history that the present generation has to contend with. And, there are different ways to do it. The Museum of African American History in Washington, D.C. also sort of takes you through. It doesn't have a provocative thesis like the 1619 project does, but it does kind of take you through warts and all, the ugly history and the positive influences that have sort of come out of that history. And I think to add to that canon, this is useful. I think, to take it as this is the New York Times kind of taking on this project is a little bit, that you lose the greater context, which is we're always coming to terms with this.
Along those lines, do you think it was the right call on the part of the Times to get so much material on the table at once, essentially, to drop this, book of a magazine and also have stuff in the newspaper on the same day and have the podcast? I kind of wonder if what you want to do is change the way people think about something as fundamental as American history and the myths of American history. I wonder if a gradual incrementalist approach might have been better. And I'm talking timing here, not content, but maybe say, for the next 6 months, we're going to be tackling a new aspect of slavery and the legacy of slavery in the Times Magazine, as opposed to just dropping this.
It might be more digestible.
I've actually been thinking about that. I think you make a good point, because I think this is a problem for a newspaper to drop this on the public. If there's a major new book, if there's a major new documentary, then people can kind of come to it on their own terms. But here you have New York Times subscribers and beyond New York Times subscribers being told, okay, this newspaper has done this and you must now engage with it. And I'm trying to find the time, and I think we all are.
Me too. All right, we got to leave it there.